Hello, and welcome back to World History. We're on page 346 in your textbook today, and we're going to read page 346 to page 347. So if you haven't opened up your textbook to page 346, make sure it is open to page 346. Do you remember from yesterday what philosophy means? That's right, love of wisdom. Do you remember three philosophers that I talked about? Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And they're all connected because one influenced the other and then influenced the other. We're going to be mentioning Aristotle again later in this video. But first, history and politics, page 346. The Greek writer Herodotus, I might have said his name wrong, is often called the father of history because he asked why certain events happened. Why did this happen? He lived during the Second Persian War and described what had happened during this war and the First Persian War in a book called The Histories, where he talked about what might have caused both of these wars, the conflict between Greece and Persia. Thucydides, I don't know how I might say this next guy's name wrong too. Thucydides. 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 I think that's it. Of Athens, lived during the Peloponnesian War. That's the one that Athens fought against Sparta. He wrote the history of the war while everything was still fresh in people's minds. He was like a news reporter would be today. He visited the battle site and interviewed people that participated in the fighting, hoping to get an accurate idea of what actually happened. He didn't want, just like Herodotus, they didn't want history to repeat itself. So by reporting events clearly, people could hopefully see where mistakes were made and not make them again. Although we have that phrase, history tends to repeat itself, for a reason. But still, good effort. You can see busts or marble statues at the bottom of page 346 of Herodotus and Thucydides. I do think it is important, while their writings are very important to us today and historians, to say that they probably showed some bias to Greece and Athens. A bias, B-I-A-S, means you show favor to things, and history tends to be told by the victors or the people who won. A historical record by a Persian would probably be very different than one by Herodotus. Herodotus and Thucydides may have exaggerated details and stretched the truth a little bit for Greece. I was thinking about the American Revolution when I was thinking about showing bias. To us, the American Revolution is a very huge deal. We won our independence from Great Britain. We were the underdogs even, people that weren't supposed to win, and we scrapped our way to freedom. We established a democracy in a world where there wasn't a lot of democracy, if any. We established a constitution, America. However, how would the American Revolution be taught in Great Britain? I thought I would check. Well, turns out it's not really talked about. Not because they lost, but it's not called the American Revolution. In Great Britain, they would call this the War for American Independence. It's mentioned maybe for a class period. See, Great Britain is a lot older than the United States, and America wasn't the only colony that they had. They had colonies in a lot of different continents like Africa and Asia and South America besides North America. And so that one losing of the colonies wasn't a really big deal in their history. And so maybe it's mentioned for a class period, and that's it. The French Revolution actually is mentioned a lot more. In the United States, our revolution helped inspire the French Revolution. Ugh, can't speak. But their point of view is that the War for American Independence is just a paragraph in a book of England history or Great Britain's history, while for us it's a very lengthy chapter. Two very different points of views, especially if we were to read what people were going through firsthand in Great Britain and in America during that time. History told from someone's point of view is called a primary source. And we have a lot of primary sources in history today. A lot of these are swayed by bias or opinion, even if they're just trying to present the facts. It's hard to just say the facts without your opinion sneaking through or what you actually like. For example, today, I see on my Facebook stream a whole bunch of different newspaper articles and blogs and journals from primary sources about this COVID-19 case. Each article referenced facts, but with a different point of view and a different opinion or bias, because I'm friends with people that think differently from other friends that I have. And I wonder how history is going to tell this COVID-19 world pandemic in 50 years or 100 years. What bias are we going to see? Is it going to be told from different points of view, depending on what country you were in? Probably. So Greek writers also discuss politics and government. I talked about this yesterday, but Plato wrote a book called The Republic. I had to read it for class in college. This book presented his views about the ideal government. His teacher Socrates did not like democracy, and that affected Plato's thinking as well. Plato thought the ideal city-state would be led by philosopher kings, who had the wisdom to make right decisions. These leaders would not be elected by the people. The philosopher Aristotle also wrote a book about government called Politics. Aristotle compared governments and said the best government would have citizens that participated but wouldn't be too extreme in their thoughts. It's a good time to take a break for the Dutch word of the day. Can you say the Dutch word from yesterday? And do you know what that means? You're right, that means I. Well, I'm going to pair along with that word, and the Dutch word for today is ben. B-E-N. Ben. Now, Ben is not a name. That's why it's not capitalized. But it is a word that means am. A-M. It means am. So, ich ben means I am. Ich ben. Try saying it. Ich ben. Good. Good. I wonder what word we'll learn off tomorrow. Probably something we can build on for our ich ben. Don't forget to write B-E-N down so that you do not forget it and you can put it on your homework for points. I just erased it. Science and technology. Greece is known for their philosophy and their technology and their knowledge and science. Greeks liked to observe what was happening with nature around them and came up with hypotheses or logical guesses to explain what was happening. We use the word hypothesis in science experiments. You might have used it for science fair. This is an educated guess about what we think is going to happen in our science experiment after we have observed or looked at something. One philosopher named Thales of Miletus asked questions such as, how big is the Earth? What is the shape of the Earth? What holds it up in space? For each of his hypotheses, he looked to nature. Now, Thales didn't have all the equipment we have today. He didn't have pictures, he didn't have an International Space Station, he didn't have those huge fancy telescopes. He didn't have all that. And so while this might seem like a no-brainer question to us, Thales tried to come up with his best explanations. and they weren't always correct. Thales believed that all things were made of water, and that the earth was a disk that floated on water. Although he was wrong, Thales influenced other thinkers to think logically. One that Mrs. Bulwark talks about when she talks about chemistry is Democritus. This philosopher said that everything is made of all of these indivisible or you can't break them down particles or balls, tiny, tiny balls, called atomos or atoms. Atoms, the phrase atoms means indivisible, which means can't be broken down. Although his idea of an atom was also incorrect, he was on the right track, and his name is included today when we talk about the history of the atom. Because the idea that we're all made up of these tiny particles that you can't see is correct. The one thing he had wrong is calling them indivisible, because atoms have parts, but he didn't know that. Finally, we have Aristotle. He studied at Plato's Academy, and later he started his own school called the Lyceum. Aristotle sought knowledge through observation. He studied nature and looked around for what was happening. He studied mathematics and logic and analyzed government and the arts. I have a quote that I'm going to read you from your textbook. About Aristotle. He was a great collector and classifier of data. What he wrote provided the framework for the discussion of biology, physics, mathematics, logic, literacy, criticism, aesthetics, psychology, ethics, and politics for 2,000 years. So he helped establish thinking that people could build off of for a very long time. The Greeks took observations one step further when they started developing different forms of technology. They built water clocks, water mills, and locks. They tried to use steam for statues, gadgets, and toys. Archimedes is rumored to have built an early laser by using mirrors to set fire to enemy ships. This is probably an exaggeration, as Mythbusters, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they've busted this myth a couple of times. They've revisited it and tried it a different way, and they still can't get ships to catch on fire by using mirrors, even modern mirrors. But like I said, there's a bias in history. Maybe those mirrors reflected light that distracted those that were sailing the boats, and they got caught up on rocks, and that's how the ship sank. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that's all we'll be talking about today. You can answer questions 3, 7, and 12 from your notes. If you want to work on that today, or you can wait till Thursday to work on it. Don't forget about the Dutch word of the day. I hope you wrote that down. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow when we talk about mathematics and medicine. Tot ziens, or until later.